All right, friends. So let's it's 9:04. Oh, wait, there's another one. Hold on. That happens every time.
First time.
Every time I go to start and say, okay, we'll start, then I get people coming into the waiting room. It happens without.
But what are they waiting
Morning,
for?
Susan. Be let into Zoom. You have to wait.
Yes, I have to.
It's
I man the
Jewish
waiting
time.
room.
Yeah, she needs it.
I mean, we could wait until 10 o'clock.
Runs a temple.
Oh no, at 10 o'clock, the trial is going back on. We have to be done.
Big deal.
Okay, so let's say our prayer for Torah, and then I'll go ahead and mute everybody. Here we go. There. Right. Let me mute everybody. Okay. So my computer's doing something weird. That is a weird sound thing coming from my computer. Awesome. All good. Anyhow, we are in Parshat Mishpatim. So last week was God descending on Mount Sinai and the Israelites standing as a group witnessing this crazy phenomenon happening and receiving the 10 commandments. Well, there are a lot more commandments than 10, right? And God starts telling them to Moses as we get into Parshat Mishpatim. Mishpatim means laws, but there are other Hebrew words for laws. So, and you've heard them, you know, the prayer, Ahavat Olam, and we say Chukim u'Mishpatim. Both of those mean laws. Chuk is a law, and Mishpatim, those are laws as well. But Mishpat has to do a lot more with justice. They're more social. These Mishpatim, these laws have more to do with social interactions and how we treat each other. So this Torah portion actually starts with the treatment of slaves. But what I brought for us today is the very end of Mishpatim. It's the last chapter. So we're in Exodus chapter 24. And basically, Moses is now going to tell the Israelites everything that God told him, but it was delivered orally. And they're sitting there, they're going to listen to everything that Moses says, but then you'll see, then Moses has to head up the mountain to write it all down. And we get this interesting answer from the Israelites when the laws are delivered to them, and they answer differently at different times in this one chapter, and we're going to look at how they answer and what that means. So who would like to read for us some of Exodus 24? Bob, take it away.
Exodus 24. Then he said to Moses, "Come up to the Lord with Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 elders of Israel, and bow low from afar. Moses alone shall come near the Lord, but the others shall not come near, nor shall the people come up with him." Moses went and repeated to the people of all the commands of the Lord and all the rules. And all the people answered with one voice, saying, "All the things that the Lord has commanded us, we will do."
We will just pause there for one moment. And in the Hebrew, at the end of that of verse 3, if you can read, and if you're able to read in the Hebrew, right before the Daled in parentheses, because that would be your 4, you can, that the 1, 2, 3, 4th line of Hebrew down, it says Kol Hadvarim, all the things Asher Diber Adonai, that God told us, Na'aseh, we will do. Okay, Bob, keep going.
Okay, let's see, I lost track. Okay.
Number 4.
Okay. Moses then wrote down all the commands of the Lord. Early in the morning, he set up the altar at the foot of the mountain with 12 pillars for the 12 tribes of Israel. He designated some young men among the Israelites, and they offered burnt offerings and sacrificed bulls as offerings of well-being of the Lord. Moses took one part of the blood and put it in the basins, and the other part of the blood he dashed against the altar. Then he took the record of the covenant and read it aloud to the people. And they said, all that the Lord has spoken will definitely do.
No, not definitely. That's not what it says.
Well, faithfully do, sorry.
Faithfully, and pause there.
Faithfully do.
And pause there.
Okay.
So I'm going to take us, if you're able to read in the Hebrew. So this is just before, so this is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines down. No, just kidding. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines down, and back up to the tail end of the 7th line. Kol asher diber Adonai, everything that God says, na'aseh v'nishma. Na'aseh v'nishma. The literal translation of that is na'aseh, we will do, v'nishma, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu. What does Shema mean? What Marcia, you're muted. What is?
Hear unto God.
What is it?
Hear unto God.
So here, Shema is here. Any other translation of Shema? Does anybody?
I would think it would be listen also.
Listen,
Hear
hear.
and listen.
Listen, hear. Now it's how is it? And it's translated.
Another one, heed. Listen,
Heed.
hear, and heed.
Listen, hear, and heed. And in the English here, it's translated as none of those, right? At the end of verse 7, and they said, all that the Lord has spoken, we will faithfully do. So here in this translation, they've put in faithfully, have not translated nishma, the listen or the hear or the heed. Who has other anybody have other commentaries at home and want to tell us how it was translated in yours? Yeah, Jim.
Yes, verse 7 says, then he took the book of the covenant and read it in the hearing of the people, and they said, all that the Lord has spoken we will do, and we will be obedient.
Oh, we will do and we will be obedient. So here, nishma, which we know very well is connected to listening in some way. Nishma is we will obediently, right? Anybody else have a different translation there? You know, it's so funny because I don't know if Lori Simmons cracks me up, Lori, because you're the picture that you have of yourself on Zoom is you waving, and with it does not matter when I'm looking for raised hands, my eye goes immediately, and then I'm like, nope, it's just a picture. Did anybody else have something other than obediently?
Yeah, I do.
Go for it.
All the Lord has spoken, we will faithfully do. That's the Etz Chaim.
Okay, so faithfully is what is in the, I think that the translation that Safaria uses is usually very similar to the Etz Chaim version. Yeah, Linda.
I have my Bible from confirmation, and it was from a conservative synagogue. And it's from, I guess, the 1950 edition, 1957 edition. And it says, all that the Lord hath spoken, we will do and obey.
Do and obey. So that's similar to obediently do, right?
That's what
Thank
the
you.
word says.
Rabbi Goodman.
He's muted.
You're muted, Rabbi.
Still muted.
No, you're still muted, Rabbi. You're still muted. I'm watching your mic.
Sorry.
You're good. No worries.
The root shin mem ayin, like as in Shema Yisrael, I think when we use, it's used in various conjugations in Hebrew. In the present, in the simple form, the kal, the most basic of the conjugations, it's hear or listen. In it sometimes is used in the passive form, it is heard, Lishamet. Yeah. In Israel on the radio, when they say until you hear us again, they put it in the hitpael, the reflexive, until we are heard again, the ishtamea, they say, or they used to. I haven't listened to Israeli radio in some decades, actually, even though I've been there a bunch of times. But this is when you jump ahead to the literature of the Midrash, the Agadah, the stories, the story sermons. This is a commonly used phrase, na'aseh v'nishma. We will do and we will obey. But the first thing we do, the fact that it comes first is very important. And there are various stories that said, and God was going to give, because this is dealing with the chosen people idea. God was going to give, offered the Torah to other peoples. And God asked one, and they said, what's included? And God says, well, thou shalt not steal. And they say, but stealing is a part of our society. And they said, well, thank you, but no thank you. And then God asks another people, and it stated, thou shalt murder. He says, well, we do that in our society under certain circumstances. No good. And finally, God lastly goes to Israel and says, will you accept my Torah? And the Israelites don't say what's in it. They say, we're going to do it. We accept it without prejudgment, and then tell us, na'aseh v'nishma, and now tell us what we need to do. In effect, I think it is. So this is a key phrase that's resonated through rabbinic literature as well. And the fact that we say, yes, we accept it unconditionally, and now in effect tell us what to do. So it's really interesting. And I've got to tell you, Cantor, you're lucky. Next week when I have Torah portion, the whole portion is dealing with the details of setting up the tabernacle.
Yeah, that was my bat mitzvah Torah portion. So if you want to have compassion.
Right, and have compassion on the bar and bat mitzvah students who have to make something out of that. So we're going to have to be creative in the rabbinic sense when you've got a text that, for the most part, unless you're interested in all the gory details, is boring as can be.
Yeah,
so I'm jealous of you this morning.
It's so true, because I remember my rabbi teaching me what a cubit was, and I'm like, oh my gosh, really? So just as a very quick aside, and then I have 4 hands to go to. So my son Blake is becoming bar mitzvah in April. Now his birthday is March 10th. But when you're familiar with the Torah and you have the bar mitzvah calendar in front of you and you're planning for your own child, and you know he's a March birthday, he will be reading from Kiddushim. So his bar mitzvah is way past his birthday, but I wasn't handing him any of the bloody.
You didn't want him to deal with leprosy.
We weren't doing cubits or leprosy or anything, any of the such. Okay, so first I'm gonna go quickly to Lance, because Lance has the Art Scroll translation he's gonna read for us real quick.
Okay, let me keep my hand. He took the Book of the Covenant and read it in earshot of the people, and they said, Everything that Hashem has spoken, we will do and we will obey.
We will do and we will obey. So we've got, we have lots of votes for obeisance. Okay, awesome. Thank you. So here's my order of hands. I have John, Wendy, Kevin.
I have my personal King James here, which, and he took the book of the covenant and read in the audience of the people. And they said, all that the Lord has said we will do and be obedient.
Thank you. And be obedient. Wendy.
Okay, the Jewish Study Bible says, we will faithfully do. The most literal translation would be, we will do and listen. And the Midrash inferred from that the people trusted God so thoroughly that they committed themselves to obeying his commandments before they even heard their contents.
Awesome. Thank you. Kevin.
Hello.
Hello.
I have a question. At this section that we're in the Torah, it's Exodus 24. Exodus goes all the way up to 40 before we start Leviticus. It would seem that what we're talking about today would be the perfect introduction to start Leviticus. And I was just wondering why the authors have placed it here, placed the story here instead of over it with Leviticus as an introduction.
So I actually think, I think we have to flip that, because it's Leviticus that is a collection of the priestly laws. So this blood dashing has to do with this particular instance of blood dashing has to do with getting the people ready to hear the laws and Moses going up the mountain, this whole preparation. So it's part of the drama of this moment. And then once we get into Leviticus, and this goes back to that, the documentary hypothesis that we bring up every once in a while, where we talk about the different authors and the way the Bible was redacted and compiled, put together, that we have this whole collection. Leviticus tends to be mostly that priestly law of how sacrifices are performed, and scholars believe that in and of itself was its own unit. And those are all the rules that they're getting. I think that the commandments, everything's been delivered, right? And they're in the wilderness, and they're setting up, right? The tabernacle's getting set up. Like that's what Rabbi Goodman was saying, is next week is the rules for putting together the Mishkan. And so it's once that's constructed and they're all ready to go, and they're going to be performing sacrifices to God, then we get in Leviticus all of those rules about how to handle everything around the Mishkan itself, around God worship, or whatever you want to call it. Jim, Kevin, do you have more to that? Otherwise I'll go to Jim. Okay, awesome, thank you. Jim, go ahead.
Well, my response is to Kevin, and he is exactly spot on, because in looking at my commentary, it says the stage is set for chapter 32. It seems probable, however, that these two ceremonies, and these scholars divided into the multiple divisions, two ceremonies represent two different ways of describing the ratification, which have an origin independent of each other. Verses 3 to 8 and continuing belong to the Elohistic source, the E source, and the first verses 1, 2, 9, 11, 12, 14 have been assigned to the Yahwistic force, the J version. So all that's part of the JEPD hypothesis. That's all.
Cool. Thank you.
Which agrees with exactly what he questioned, or talk about beginning Leviticus.
Very cool. Thank you. Anyone else on that particular section? Rabbi Goodman, was that your hand or? Yeah, okay. Just make sure to unmute and then we can't hear you though. Make sure, unmute. No, Rabbi Goodman, you're muted. You're
You
talking.
did and I did.
There you
Okay.
go.
We hear, and Jim, I learned a lot about the documentary hypothesis in school and afterward, that we do know for sure that the Torah was put together and written over a period of perhaps 400 or 500 years. And that there may have been two parallel traditions when they started putting things in writing, probably somewhere around the year 1000. And they call it the J and the E. J for, because there's no J in Hebrew, would be those who would refer to God as Jehovah, and those who would refer to God as Elohim. And I'm sure, and these were blended, and it may have been that one, in the case of the story of Pesach, we were blending two traditions. The one night, Pesach festival with cooking barbecuing the lamb and putting blood on the doorpost, and a 7-day Canaanite matzah festival that came together. So the thing that we have to remember, however this came together, it came together over this 500-year period. And what we have is the final product, which got the approval of the final editors. It had been in committees, so to speak, and it was the board of directors who finally said, this is what we want, this is what we approved. And if there was something there that went against these final board of directors, who were priests, perhaps at the time of Ezra, if something really stood out in opposition to their teachings, they would do their best to locate it they couldn't get rid of the text, so they located it in a way that it would be as unnoticeable as possible. So we have to remember that this is a process and it's an evolving document, and we need to keep that perspective. So, and not get hung up on J and E. I mean, Leviticus are mostly the priestly documents, and D, Deuteronomy, is a restating of the law, Deuteronomos, second law, written in a prophetic style. So it repeats the laws and adds a few in there. I mean, that's just a perspective. Thank you.
I muted myself so I could chew without bothering all of your ears. Thank you, Rabbi Goodman. Okay, so what I'd like to do is let's just finish reading chapter 24, and then if anything comes up, we'll talk about it. But then we're going to move into our little bit of commentary and focus on that question of doing and obeying and hearing and all of that good stuff. So who would like to pick up from verse 8? Marcia, yeah, go ahead.
So you can hear me?
Yep.
Okay, Moses, I'm reading from the women's commentary. It's easier, but it's the same thing.
Okay.
Moses took the blood and dashed it on the people and said, "This is the blood of the covenant that Adonai now makes with you concerning all these commands." Then Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 elders of Israel ascended. And they saw the God of Israel, under whose feet was the likeness of a pavement of sapphire, like the very sky for purity. Yet God did not raise a hand against the leaders of the Israelites. They beheld God, and they ate and drank. Adonai said to Moses, "Come up to me on the mountain and wait there, and I will give you the stone tablets with the teachings and commandments which I have inscribed to instruct them." So Moses and his attendant Joshua arose, and Moses ascended the mountain of God. To the elders he had said, "Wait here for us until we return to you. You have Aaron and Hur with you. Let anyone who has a legal matter approach them." When Moses had ascended the mountain, the cloud covered the mountain. The presence of Adonai abode on Mount Sinai, and the cloud hid it for 6 days. On the seventh day, God called to Moses from the midst of the cloud. Now the presence of Adonai appeared in the sight of the Israelites as a consuming fire on the top of the mountain. Moses went inside the cloud and ascended the mountain, and Moses remained on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights.
Thank you, Marsha.
I have a quick question that just came to my mind. Moses remained on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights, and they were stuck in the desert 40 years. Is there a special significance to 40?
So, and there's another 40 days and 40 nights. Where's the other 40?
Passover. From Passover to Shavuot.
Is not,
No,
it's
that's
not 40.
50.
That's
50.
40. That's 7 weeks, 49. But the other 40 days and 40 nights.
The flood.
The flood. Noah and the flood, exactly.
I have a question.
Hold up. Let's see if we can answer the question. Rabbi Goodman, do you happen to, oh, I just froze. Oh, good. I unfroze. Okay. I froze. I threw my pen down and I unfroze. No, I
It's
don't.
one of those word numbers that we use, like 7 and.
One of those things that just repeats over and over.
I'm sure Midrash has dealt with it a lot and but I can't give a knowledgeable answer.
Okay, so
that's a good enough answer for me.
It'll be a good project for us though to see what other people have said about 40. Wendy, go ahead.
Okay, we're down and we're going to accept the Torah, and Moses reads it aloud. Then he took the record of the covenant and read it aloud to the people. That was back in verse 7. Now we're diddly bopping ahead, and he's going up on the mountain, and God is going to write it on stone tablets.
Mm-hmm.
So where did the other thing come from? Just thought I would point that out.
How often does something like that? Oh, Lance's my raised hand moved to reaction button at the bottom in case anyone else has moved. You found your raised hand, Lance? Do you have an answer for us?
Oh, please do.
No? Because it's a really, really great question. It's a little confusing here as to what exactly was read to the people, and then what needs to be recorded, what they already heard, what they haven't heard yet. I don't think that this is clear as day. I think it's convoluted for us. I don't. Anybody thought about this? Have comments? Karen, yeah.
I think that's what happens when you write something with the committee. And nobody did some really thorough proofreading.
Oh, Rashi.
What does
Rashi says? This means Genesis and the first half of Exodus. More probably it was the Decalogue and chapters 20, 19 to 23, 33. They are the Torah in epitome. That's all it says.
Yep.
That's in the Hirsch.
Right, like I think that here they're really referring to the stuff that the 10 Commandments and what came right after it. But it's hard because we learn that it was all delivered at one time. So we're going back and forth saying, I'm not sure. Lance, go ahead. No, Lance, you're muted. You're still muted.
Okay, I've got a button on my headset that's supposed to undo that. But anyway, this is one of the arguments for the oral Torah, that because that it backfills in the questions, that the Torah that we have written, or the crib sheets, the Cliff Notes, and the Oral Torah was the larger body of work that was passed down, supposed to be dynamic. The Reform movement reinstituted the dynamicness of that centuries after Yehuda Hanasi, but it was, like I said, because there's so many questions that are unanswered. There are up in the Shema, put them on it for a sign upon your head. Put what? In this case, there is, the question you're raising. What was said here? What was said then? When was it all given? And so on. Those holes, those questions are traditionally filled in by the Oral Torah and its descending volumes.
Thank you, Lance. Wendy, you have your hand up again. Go ahead. Wait, I muted you because you have an unbelievable amount of background noise. So when you're not talking, I have to keep you muted, but you go ahead.
Okay, in this one, it says record, a scroll or stone inscription. So obviously they had something that was tangible. Well, not obviously, but inferred, I guess, that they had something that was tangible.
No, because you're just reading someone's commentary of what they think record means. There's no, right, we can't really make an.
Right, but we're assuming.
I assume nothing.
That it means that there was, because he was reading it. He didn't, and he hadn't been up there to get the message either.
So. No, I don't disagree. I just don't make any assumptions because the text is thousands of years old. So I assume nothing, right?
You're right. I mean, I'm just telling you what the book says. The good book.
But I have this, but I'm also, I'm a cautious optimist, but I will tell people, they'll say, well, we can assume that such and such will happen. And I say, oh no, I won't believe it until I've seen it happen. I assume nothing. And that's just from experience. Okay. Wendy, go ahead and remute yourself so we can get the background noise out. And okay,
I did. I'm sorry.
We've got Kevin and then Rabbi Goodman.
I did a little Googling on that 40, and there seems to be a consensus. The last one I looked at was from Aish, and they're saying that the number 40 represents transition or change and the concept of renewal. And then it asks you to consider that when a person becomes ritually impure, he must immerse in a ritual bath, a mikvah. The Talmud tells us that a mikvah must be filled with 40 seahs, which is the measure of water. Immersion in a mikvah is the consummate Jewish symbol of spiritual renewal. Goes on in Noah, the earth was underwater for 40 days, and then when Noah and the earth emerged, there was renewal. And renewal also goes with transformation. And when Moses came down after 40 days and 40 nights, it was a transformation for the people. Kabbalah 40 represents the 4 sides of the world, which each containing the 10 Sephirot, esoteric powers. Also, there are 40 days between the first day of Elul, when we begin to blow the shofar to prepare for Rosh Hashanah, until Yom Kippur. And it goes on and on about different things like that. So it seems to be a time period, besides being a really long time, and they did mention that in there. It seems to be a period that it's not just a really long time. You have to take advantage of that really long time to reflect and renew yourself and repurify yourself, whatever the case may be.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Rabbi Goodman.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. I started Googling this, Google is very handy for facts that you don't have in your fingertips. As I was preparing for Intro to Judaism the next 2 weeks and names, and I needed the dates for this person or that, it was all there. I mean, it's unbelievable how helpful it is. But I Googled 40 The number 40, I did 40 in the Bible. And the most interesting article, believe it or not, came from a piece in Reader's Digest, a source I wouldn't look at. And they say that the number 40 is used, it's very pervasive, not only in the Bible, it appears in the two Bibles, Hebrew Bible and New Testament, it appears 146 times, which kind of blew me away. And it seems to be shorthand, as you said, Kevin, for a long time. A significant period of time. If they don't want to put a number on it, they say, or they're not sure, those 40 years seem to be symbolic for a lengthy period of time, or the number 40. And, but it doesn't, I mean, you can read all kinds of things into it, but I think that's really what it was about. Okay, thank you.
Rabbi John.
Sorry, fumble fingers this morning. As someone who used to have to write and interpret regulations in writing stuff down because people seem to require, I'm not going to just take your word for it, a handshake, I want it in writing. I spent more time arguing with people, and I do mean arguing, because they would question the placing of a comma or the word and they'd twist themselves into knots, literally, and they'd insist you either change it or we're doing it our way. And I'm saying, fine, if you want to be that picky about it. So I had to be very careful when I wrote stuff, and I had other people read it, say, can you possibly misinterpret this to suit? But that's the thing about putting something that important in writing. And then again, like I said, we spend all our time twisting ourselves into knots about what does that one little word mean? Just a commentary.
Thank you. Ed.
And following up with what John has to say, even today, as I read appellate decisions, and Kevin bears this out, the appellate courts will decide an entire case based upon where the legislature has put a comma. Sorry, Judge, left you out of that one too. And Judge would certainly remember this. But you're looking at the comma and the word "and" in the statute, and what was the intent of the legislatures. And so where you put these things in a sentence can change the whole meaning of the sentence. To this day, they screw it up.
Thank you. Thanks, Ed. All right, guys. So let's move on. Ed, if you would go ahead and remute yourself because you have. I'm not judging those of you who have background noise. I'm just stating fact. That's no, just know that. But I'll forever remember you as the people who had background noise in your Zoom rooms. But, has nothing to do with you. Okay, so if we move forward in our resources today, what I did was I pulled out Exodus 24:7, which we've already read a bunch of times, that tells us Na'aseh v'nishma, whether we will do, and we will heed, we will obey, we will listen, whatever. And then Rashbam below interprets it as we will carry out what God has said already, and we are also prepared to listen, obey to what God will command from here on in. So now Rashbam's reading into that, saying that this is now also in perpetuity, not just what you just said to us, but from now on, anything that God says, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do, and we're going to, whatever that is. And would someone read for us just at the bottom of the page what we have in the Kiddushin? It's our rabbis asking us this question, and then we're gonna take it to our article. Jim, go ahead.
Is learning greater or deed greater? Rabbi Tarfon answered, deed is greater. Rabbi Eliezer responded and said, learning is greater. Then someone else responded to both of them and said that learning is greater as learning leads to deed.
Ooh, thank you. Okay, so here's our big question. Any opinions? Learning or deed? The actual doing, or the learning, absorbing, and obey, carrying out, I get. No, the doing is the carrying out. Lance, please go ahead.
Well, if learning does not lead to deeds, then the learning is of minimal use, if any use. So, you know, the purpose of coming into Torah study for me, and the purpose of studying this and learning from all of you, is to become a better person and to do my deeds better.
How do I raise my hand?
I see lots of hands. Okay, Marcia and then Wendy.
First of all, I don't know how to raise my hand anymore on this computer.
Lance said they changed it and put
Yes.
it. Lance said it's moved to the reaction button at the bottom. The raise hand moved to the reaction.
Okay, I got it. Okay, what I want to say is that you really can't do anything in a constructive or knowledgeable way without having learned about it. Because if you do something without learning about it, then you're acting in a very haphazard way, and you can cause damage rather than something constructive.
You know, the phrase that just popped into my head was, I was just following orders.
Well, that's stupidity.
Right? The doing without any of the foundational knowledge. Wendy and then Jim.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how do you know what to do if you haven't?
I just said that.
Wait, Wendy, you muted yourself. I swear I didn't do it.
No, I did.
Okay.
I guess. No, I agree with you.
Thank you.
That you would have to know. Well, I was thinking, you know, in terms of like cooking, you could go and cook something, but you wouldn't know how to do it or what to do. And you could make a mess, or you could come up with a great thing, but you'd have to know the basics of whatever you were going to do. Anyway, forget it.
No, I'm working with that in my head because because if you can follow a recipe, but if you don't like the taste, someone who really knows, who's really done who knows intimately the kitchen, can make adjustments to the recipe based on
reading it, and you could tell,
or even like tasting and saying, oh yeah, no, this needed this and this and that. There's a difference there in the level of engagement, I think, right? Jim, and then let's go ahead and read this last little article here.
I'm one of those crazy guys that reads the entire instruction book before doing any process. I spent 35 years of my life primarily fixing problems that were created by people who did not follow the proper instructions. So before you even open your new gadget, find the instruction book and read the book. That's my advice.
I've had that conversation so many times with my husband.
Right.
Like,
there's nothing wrong with
did
reading
you read the instructions before you got to this point?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, let's read what we've got here. Silver from the Land of Israel, from the writings of Rabbi Abraham Isaac Cohen Cook. And then I don't know why that's, but I think it's probably a translation after blah, 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 blah. Okay, so who would like to start reading for us this piece here? And take it nice and slowly because it's a little complicated. Linda, go for it.
The ultimate moment of glory for the Jewish people, their greatest hour, occurred as God revealed his Torah at Mount Sinai. The Israelites remarkably pledged Na'aseh v'nishma. We will do and we will listen to all that God has declared. Exodus 24:7. They made two promises, to do and to listen. The order is crucial. They promised to keep the Torah even before knowing why. The Midrash, Shabbat 88a, related that. In merit of this pledge of loyalty, the angels rewarded each Jew with 2 crowns. And a heavenly voice explained, "Who revealed to my children this secret used by the angels? What was so special about this vow? We will do and we will listen." On the contrary, would not fulfilling mitzvot with understanding and enlightenment be a superior level of Torah observance? And why does the Midrash refer to this form of unquestioning allegiance as a secret used by the angels?
So before we go on, let's address those questions. That question, would not fulfilling mitzvot with understanding and enlightenment be a superior level of Torah observance? What are we saying? This is really, I have a hard time with it because I don't.
Is that the learning part that you need to learn first?
Yes. Yeah. So there we're being told that that order that they said we will listen, we will do it, that we will do it comes first. This order is important. John, go ahead.
Well, you raised an interesting question a minute ago, and of course a disturbing one, because of course you quoted the Nuremberg defense. You know, I was just following orders. Because you can read an order, but if you don't think it through, what are the consequences? Because you can take it absolutely literally. And if you don't think about, you know, what are the consequences of my action? It's one thing, and Ed will probably back me up on this one, is that the idea that we were expected to understand the difference between a lawful order and an unlawful order. You know, that because, you know, listen and hear it and digest it and understand it before you carry it out, because there are implications in there. And like I said, the Nazis tried to hide behind, well, I was just following orders. In other words, you just turned it off and did exactly what you were told. So it does raise an interesting question, that if we, you know, do we understand the full implications of what we were told to do? I'll leave it there for other people.
It's a really, really important question. Karen.
I think that kind of comes to what Reform Judaism is, that we examine what it all means and then how do we apply it to current life. I mean, I just can't deal with blind obedience. It just doesn't make any sense to me at all. And whether it's Nazis or what we're dealing with today, it just isn't appropriate. And we're thinking people and we need to use our brains. It's just who we are.
Right. So we say that, but on the flip side, there's an argument that faith, right? Faith doesn't require any of that, that you show your faith by doing the action.
Well, and that's how we ended up with COVID spreading in Brooklyn or New Rochelle or wherever it was, because they were going to follow their faith and not use their heads. It doesn't make any more sense today than it did back in the time of the Bible.
Thank you.
But that's me.
Rabbi Goodman.
Okay. I'm going to backtrack a little bit here. You have a group of Israelites who really are in the desert against their will. They had a certain level of security in Egypt, even though life was terrible. At least they knew what they were going to eat the next morning and so on. So they were kind of unwilling. They were unwilling participants And perhaps the text is saying, from the viewpoint of later years, these people had to have faith in God, meaning trust, ne'eman, or emunah, meaning in the way that in wisdom we mentioned, and Abraham had faith in God in chapter 16, and it probably meant he trusted God. And so what they're stating here is, first, the people, when they said na'aseh, we will do, before, any question about what they were doing, it was a sign of trust in God. And normally we don't operate that way, but this is what the long view wanted the people to be able to do, to say, we trust you, God. Now let us learn about what we need to do. So in the same way of worship services, if you were to take our service that we use every week and take out a piece of paper and write down all the things that it mentions that we should do, how we should translate our prayers into our lives, you're not going to even get it in on one page. I mean, it's faith leads to action. And what we talked about this a little bit last Tuesday, that the spirituality, the faith element, our beliefs are essentially individual and personal. It's how we connect them to community and put them to work is when we have religion. The act of being here today and exploring how we can make this relevant to our lives, that's community, that's religion. And all the little things we do to translate our faith into action, that's one of the goals of religion, and that's what community is all about. So I think that's what it's saying here. It's reminding the people that they have to trust God and move forward.
Thank you, Rabbi. Jenny, are you waving at me?
Yeah,
Okay.
I can't figure out how to work this
No,
thing.
so it's Jenny and then Ron.
I just want to say, I keep thinking about that phrase that says, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, and I also feel that faith and deed, you just can't have one without the other. I feel like you can't have a love for animals and not learn compassion with people. It just goes hand in hand. One teaches us the other. There have been times in my life where I learned enough to go ahead and do the deed. You know what I mean? And sometimes that means like you learn enough of the understanding to and there's like so much inspiration that goes with it, that's what hurls me forward to actually do an action. Does that make sense? Thank you.
Thank you. Ron, go ahead.
Well, I think if you look at the context in which all this was supposed to have taken place, you have the people and they're confronted with what they believe to be an all-knowing, all-powerful, all-wise deity telling them, this is what I want. And it was like, okay, why should they question that? They had no reason to think otherwise. They thought, well, it's got to be the right thing. It's got to be what we should be doing. Let's do it. It's not like they were in Torah study and thinking, well, let's do this or well, let's do that, or maybe what about this or what about it? No, there wasn't any what about anything. It was, this is the way it is. And I think that was sort of the way they would have, if this actually took place, that they would have viewed it.
Thank you. John.
Sorry, my head's kind of exploding this morning. I'm remembering another commentary somewhere, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, about two schools of rabbinic authorities arguing about who was right. Is somewhere else.
Everywhere.
And the creator, God, steps in and said, Rabbi so-and-so is correct. And they respond by saying, not quite mind your own business, but You gave us this to work with. Please respect us and let us work with it. It's somewhere out there and I can't remember the exact source. So, but that just popped into my head. But we're responsible for working this. We accepted it.
Thank you. Before we finish up, I'd love to go and read this last section. So it's in answering that there were two questions before that thing that says intuitive knowledge, right? In the paragraph right above, there were two questions that were asked. And that last one was, and why does the Midrash refer to this form of unquestioning allegiance as a secret used by the angels? So this is an attempt at answering that question about intuitive knowledge. Would anyone like to finish reading this for us this morning? Ron, go ahead.
While wisdom is usually acquired through study and contemplation, there exists in nature an intuitive knowledge that requires no formal education. The bee, for example, naturally knows the optimal geometric shape for building honeycomb cells. No bee has ever needed to register for engineering courses at MIT. Intuitive knowledge also exists in the spiritual realm. Angels are sublime spiritual entities who do not require extensive Torah study in order to know how to serve God. Their holiness is ingrained in their very nature. It is only human beings prone to being confused by pseudoscientific indoctrination who need to struggle in order to return to their pristine spiritual selves. For the Jews who stood at Mount Sinai, it was not only Torah and mitzvot that were revealed. They also discovered their own true inner essence. They attained a sublime level of natural purity and intuitively proclaimed, "We will do. We will follow our natural essence unhindered by any spurious artificial conventions."
Any comments on that? Thank you, Ron. Rabbi, yeah.
It really puts me off.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't believe that was not written by Rav Kook.
That must be Hanan Morrison at the bottom. Yeah.
That's what I think, but we don't know anything about him.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, this is an anti-intellectual statement. This is saying don't question, accept these assumptions. His statements of faith is a starting point. And it's saying that's totally unacceptable to me. I don't think this is meant. Jewish tradition has a tradition of arguing with God, of questioning, of challenging, of Honi the Hameagel, Honi the circle maker standing. They were way deficient in rain, and he stands in the middle of it, stands and he draws a circle around him and he says, "God, I am not leaving until you make it rain." And according to the Haggadah, it did rain. We are allowed to question and intellectual pursuits. And what we're doing is this. I could just see this statement made at a conference of Reform rabbis and cantors. And the guy would get booed out of there.
Right? The term pseudoscientific indoctrination. And we all go,
right.
I know.
If there's a minute at the end, there are two verses I have trouble with in this chapter, 9 and 10. I'd like to look at them for a few minutes.
Okay, cool. So we're going to go to, it's Marcia and Bob, and then Rabbi, you can, if you'd finish up for us, that would be great.
Okay, well, I will take the other message that this paragraph is putting forth, which is intuitive knowledge. We all have intuition, and very often it could be even equated with common sense. So then again, not everybody has that. So intuition is a very powerful thing. And if we, fast forwarding to today, because we're living today, we're studying thousands of years ago, but we do have to apply it to our lives today and the situations that we have to deal with. And every one of us has an intuition, and you can come upon a situation and you get this gut feeling whether it's right or whether it's wrong inside of you. And if you really feel strongly inside of you that this is wrong, you will try every way not to do it, but an intelligent person will try to find out what is wrong about it in their own thinking and try to understand it. So to me, intuitive knowledge is a very important element. And I mean, yeah, all right, what Rabbi Goodman is saying has a lot of validity with this paragraph. It's not the best thing to be put forward as an instructional thing, but intuition is a very, very powerful element of our lives.
For sure. Thank you, Marcia. Bob.
It takes away your free will. I believe in free will. If you decide what you want to do, that's what Reformed Judaism is all about in my mind. It's all about, it's not as structured as some of the other facets of Judaism. That's why I like Reform, because you can make changes in your mind and decisions can be your own. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Rabbi Goodman, take us to where you want to go, but if you could try to do it in 5 minutes or less, that would be awesome.
I think what they're calling intuition here, I mean, some of that is genetic programming, that different animals know certain things is built into them. Rabbi Kushner tries to make a case, and I don't know, it's interesting to read about in that 9 lessons I learned about how even as infants, we have a certain moral awareness and awareness of the needs of other people around us. Whether that's the case or not, I don't know. But let's look at verses 9 and 10. So Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and the 70 elders of Israel ascended partway up the mountain, and they saw the God of Israel. And then it says, and I've been struggling this for days, under his feet there was a likeness of a pavement of sapphire, like the very sky for purity, blue. Okay, I mean, new, what does it mean? And I was looking for commentaries, and I want to share one thing with you. And this is from the book that you have, Wendy, the Jewish Study Bible. I think that's the one in the notes. And it says, the Bible does not deny that God is visible, but the text is reticent about describing God. By focusing on what was under his feet, it seems to suggest that the leaders did not see God directly, but from below, through a transparent sapphire, something like a lapis, colored pavement. So in other words, because they were always concerned about not seeing God directly. Is the floor of God's palace, also explains why the sky is blue. And trying to figure out what that was. I mean, it's kind of a mystical statement that, what he's saying here and in other places, we don't really see God. And later, did Moses directly see God, or kind of a God once removed? In other words, we're all looking, I think we're looking for God, but I think it's an interesting portrayal. And in here, there's numerous, and in other commentaries, the Plout and the JPS and others, there are references to other religious contexts outside of Judaism. So that there's I'm going to raise a few questions next week, hopefully, so I can keep you awake and challenged a little bit. Anyhow, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have one. Jim's got his hand up.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. Okay. The thought on what he was just talking about here. Throughout history, of course, ancient people have not understood the universe, and they often perceive the earth as this big flat body, and there was a canopy of heaven, if you wish. That's the term that's frequently used, a canopy of heaven. And God was above this canopy of heaven. So when you're looking up at that beautiful blue sky, like in the background of my photo there, not a cloud in the sky, you know, you're looking up at the water, you know, because when you look out on a lake, a beautiful clear water lake, I must add, that it always appears blue, which is simply the reflection of the sky. So that's what you're looking at, the feet of God standing up on above the canopy. That's all.
All right, thank you. And Lance, you want to finish us up this morning?
Sure. One of the things that is sort of gnawing at me is a number of people have sat there and said, we think about everything before we decide to do it. And the point that we start from, that we come from, is a moralistic reality that comes from God. So in other words, do not kill. Well, we take that as, to us, it almost feels instinctive, but it's not. It's learned. Do not steal is not learned by everybody, unfortunately, nor is do not kill. But for us as moral people, we got that from the Bible, from God. And then we expand from that moral basis that is provided by God to argue the less foundational elements. So in some ways we do because we were told, do not kill, do not steal. And in other ways, from that foundation, that basis, we sit there and expand and nuance. Okay, well, what happens if someone's a mass murderer? Is the death penalty appropriate? Or, you know, if someone else stole, can the government take it back? Which is arguably an act of stealing from this thief. So that's all.
Thanks, Lance. It's a lot to think about. It's great conversation. I'm going to wrap us up, but because I have to go get ready for services. But before I go, just because I absolutely loved the example of the bee who did not need to register for engineering courses at MIT, if you are a Jerry Seinfeld fan, and honestly, even if you're not, and you haven't seen Bee Movie, BEE, take a look at Bee Movie. It is a cartoon of bees. It is a blast. It is so much fun. And that's probably you would not be surprised to see one of those bees attending MIT. So you should check it out if you enjoy a good comedy, especially on a rainy weekend. So that's all I have to say about that. You've got my recommendation.
Where do we find it? Where do we find it?
You know, I don't know. I don't know if it's on Netflix.
Movie she just talked about.
Bee movie, as in Buzz Bee.
Disney, probably.
It's not a Disney film. It's not a Disney film, so it's not on Disney. It might be on Netflix. I'm not sure. But if you can find it, check it out. It's really fun. It's Jerry Seinfeld, Matthew Broderick, Renee Zellweger, and we get a very fun view of the bee world.
Look for it on YouTube.
I don't know. Here, I'll see if I can find.
It's on Netflix.
It's on Netflix. Thank you.
What's the name of it? What's the name?
Bee movie. Bee movie. BEE, as in the thing that buzzes.
Yeah.
Bee movie. Enjoy. Tell me what you think. All right, everybody. I'm gonna take away my screen and my sound and move my computer around. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, Ken.
Take care, everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Bye.
See you at services.
Stay dry.
Yeah, it's raining out.
Quick movie recommendation. My son sent this to me from Israel and we watched it. It's a film on Amazon Prime. It might be on Netflix also, from 2013 called Redwood, like the trees in California, Redwood Highway.
There we go.
Ohalecha Yaakov, Ohalecha Yaakov, Shkinotecha Yisrael. Va'ani berov v'astecha, avor eitecha. Eshtachavei elecha, lo yitzchak yiratecha. Matov, matov, ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael. Adonai ahavti v'yod beitecha, u'mekom mishkan kodecha. Dani ashkachavei lecha, emlecha lifnei Adonai usi. Matov, matov, ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael. Mishkenotecha Yisrael. Mishkenotecha Yisrael.
The top of page 77. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe. With divine wisdom, you have made our bodies, combining veins, arteries, and vital organs into a finely balanced network. Wondrous maker and sustainer of life, were one of them to fail, how well we are aware. We would lack the strength to stand before you. Blessed are you, Adonai, source of our health and strength. Baruch atah Adonai rofei chol basar umafli la'asot. Elohai Nishama, page 78.
Elohai, Elohai, Neshama, Shenatata vi tehorai, Tabiruta, Atoyitzarta, Atonefachta vi, Letab Mishamra, Mishamra Bikibi. Elohai, Elohai, Neshama, Shenatata bi tehorai, tehorai.
Nisim b'chol yom, page 80. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan letzachvivina lehatchin ben yom uvein laila.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokei achivrihim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sokef kifufihim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam rokach haaretz al hamayim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechin mitzadei gaver.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam mabish arunim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanoten le'ayaf koach.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hama'avir shena me'enai utnuma me'af apai.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani b'tselem Elohim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani bat horim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani Yisrael.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozer Yisrael b'gvura.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam otei Yisrael b'tifaraha.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Let's turn over to page 88 for Elu Devarim. Would anyone like to read the English for us this morning? Marcia, go ahead.
These are the things that are limitless, of which a person enjoys the fruit of the world, while the principle remains in the world to come. They are honoring one's father and mother, engaging in deeds of compassion, arriving early for study, morning and evening, dealing graciously with guests, visiting the sick, providing for the wedding couple, accompanying the dead for burial, being devoted in prayer, and making peace among people. But the study of Torah encompasses them all.
Thank you, Marcia. Let's all head over to page 100 for Psalm 150. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, bekocho, hallelujah, berki hamzot, hallelujah, bigurotov, hallelujah, kirokulot, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, take a shofar. Hallelujah, b'nagad v'chinor. Hallelujah, b'tof machor. Hallelujah, b'minim me'ugam. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, betzirtele shama. Hallelujah, betzirtele trua. Kol hanshama hallelujah. Kol hanshama hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Page 106. Yitkadash, yitkadash, shmei Rabbah. Mi'amad yimrachirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayachon v'yomechon u'chayedechu beit Yisrael. B'kalov v'zeman kariv v'imeru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'alam u'lamei olamaya yitbarach.
Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitormam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitali v'yitala shmei dekucha Richule elami kol brechata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata dam yinran me'alema v'meru amen. And as we turn to page 108, we rise either in body or in spirit for our call to prayer. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Baruch HaMevorach Le'olam Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech haolam Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech haolam Yotzer or uborei choshech Oseh shalom shalom uborei et hakol Yotzer or uborei choshech Oseh shalom shalom uborei et hakol. Sheila, would you read for us on page 111, You Are Praised?
You are praised, who rolls out the rough, raw clay of the universe into delicate vessels of light. And from nothing at all, we could perceive in a world that has turned old, a shimmering new creation right before our eyes, made this moment just for us. How much of life reveals your presence? How much Torah unfolds from each new flower, from each new wave that breaks upon the sea. You are praised, who forms from the clay that cloaks our lives, the delicate vessels which contain our light. Baruch atah Adonai Yoseh Hamarot.
Amen. Thank you. Let's look at the top of page 112. I'm going to take us through just for a moment because we're going to look for the words that we saw during Torah study. Our prayer at the very top, Ahava Rabbah Ahavtanu. The depth of love you've loved us with, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai our God. Chemla Gedola V'Terach Hamalta Aleinu. Ba'avor Avotenu Ve'imotenu Shabbatchu V'cha Batlamdem Chukei Chayim, the laws of life. Kain Techonenu Utlamdenu. You taught us. Hamrachem Rachem Aleinu. B'tein Bilibenu Lehavin Ul Haskil. So now we're on in the English. O merciful one, have mercy on us. Hamrachem Aleinu. Now we're going to go from the Hebrew to the English. V'tein bilibenu, just kidding. Yes, v'tein bilibenu, and give in our hearts lehavin ul haskil, the ability to understand and discern. Lishmoa, we had this morning, lishmoa, v'nishma. Here it is to heed, to heed. Lilmodu lamed, to learn and teach.
V'la'asot lishmor, to guard, v'la'asot, and to do. V'la'kayem et kol divrei Talmud Toratecha be'ahava, and lovingly to observe, perform, and fulfill all that is in your Torah. Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will listen. V'ha'er einenu. V'ha'er einenu b'toratecha v'davek libeinu b'mitzvotecha v'yachen levabeinu le'ahava u'yira et shemecha v'lo nevosh v'lo nikalim v'lo nikashim le'olam ki v'shem kodeshecha hagadol v'hanora v'tachnun nagila v'nismecha nagila v'nismecha yeshuatecha. And on the other side of the page, love your neighbor as yourself, you said. And light blinded, we saw that inner and outer worlds as you are one. You spoke and we wrote. We reached for you down the centuries, your light moving before us as we climbed, fell back, and climbed again, your Sinai of life. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher ba'amo Yisrael ba'ahava. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Le'olam Vahed. Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Le'olam Vahed. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Let's be seated. Instead of reciting, chanting the Haftarah this morning, I would love for us to go over to 117. And could I have, actually, it would be great if Ron and Barbara would read for us that reading on the second half of the page that begins, if we can hear, and if maybe one of you took the paragraphs that are indented and the other one, the other paragraph.
If we can hear the words from Sinai, then love will flow from us, and we shall serve all that is holy with all our intellect and all our passion and all our life.
If we can serve all that is holy, we shall be doing all that humans can to help the rains to flow, the grasses to be green, the grains to be golden like the sun, and the rivers to be filled with life once more.
All the children of God shall eat, and there will be enough. But if we turn from Sinai's words and serve only what is common and profane, making gods of our own comfort or power, then the holiness of life will contract for us. Our world will grow inhospitable.
Let us therefore lace these words into our passion and our intellect, and bind them as a sign upon our hands and eyes. Let us write them in mitzvot upon our mezuzot upon our doors, and teach them to our children.
Let us honor the generations that came before us, keeping the promise for those yet to be.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for reading that for us. Let's turn over to page 123. Marilyn, would you read for us The Good in Us?
Here. The good in us will win over all the wickedness, over all the wrongs we have done. We will look back at the pages of written history and be amazed, and then we will laugh and sing. And the good that is in us, children in their cradles, will have won. Our hearts beat with certainty that there is a day and an hour and a mountain called Zion, and that all of the sufferings will gather there and become song, ringing out into every corner of the earth from end to end. And the nations will hear it, and like the caravans in the desert, will all to do that morning throng.
Thank you. And we move over to the opposite side of the page for our song of freedom, Mi Chamocha. Mi Chamocha ba'elim Adonai, Mi Chamocha nedar b'kodesh, Mi Chamocha ba'elim Adonai, Mi Chamocha nedar b'kodesh. Norati lo oseh beleh, norati lo oseh beleh, Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed. Shir chadasha shifchu hirulim, לשמחה שפת הים, יחד כולם מודו, והמלכו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, מי כמוך Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh. Norati lo oseh beleh, norati lo oseh beleh, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Israel, kol ma've'ezrat Yisrael, ufdeichenu mecha Yehuda v'Yisrael, golein Adonai tzvaot shemo, kedosh Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. Adonai sefatai tiftachu v'yagi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah. Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim v'Konei Hakol, v'Zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, U'mevii Geula Livnei v'Neihem Lema'an Shemo v'Ahava, Melech Ozer u'Moshia u'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'Ezrat Sarah. Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayeach kol atarav lehoshia. Mashiv haruach u'marid hagashem, Mechalkel chayim bechesed, mechaye hakol berachamim rabim. Somech noflim v'rofei cholim, umatir asurim, umekayem emunato, lishenei afar. Michamocha ba'al gevurot, umido melech, melech memit umechayer, umatzmiach Yeshua. V'ne'eman talachayot hakol baruch atah Adonai mechayei hakol. Nikadesh et shimcha ba'olam kishem shemakdishim hoto b'shmei marom kakatuv al yad neviyecha v'kara zeh ve'amar Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzivot, Melech ol haaretz, Kivodo. Adir, Adirenu, Adonai, Adonenu, Madir, Shimcha b'chol haaretz, Baruch Kivod Adonai, Mimkomo. Echad hu Eloheinu, hu avinu hu malkeinu, hu moshienu lehu yashmienu, berachamav le'enei kol chai. Ani Adonai Elohechem, imloch Adonai leolam, Elohai Tzion, ledor v'ador. Hallelujah. Ledor v'adonai kod lacha, unetzach netzachim kedushatcha nakdish, v'shivchacha Eloheinu mipinu lo yamush, leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai hakadosh. Let's be seated once more as we continue at the top of 132. Yismechu b'malachutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, onei Shabbat. Yismechu b'malachutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, onei Shabbat. Mikadshei shmi Shabbat, kulam yisbehu, v'yithangu mituach Shabbat. Yismechu b'malachutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, onei Shabbat. Yismechu b'malachutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, onei Shabbat. Ulashmi ratzita bo v'kidashto Shabbat. Chemad yamim oto karata Shabbat. Yismechu b'malachutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, onei Shabbat. Yismechu b'malachutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, onei Shabbat. Did I do the second verse yet? Am I on the second or third? I'm on the third. Awesome. Masei v'rishit Shabbat, Masei v'rishit Shabbat. Yismechu b'malachutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, onei Shabbat. Yismechu b'malachutecha, shomrei, 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 right, let's turn over to page 134 at the bottom. Bernie, would you read for us on 134? Will it unmute for you? Would you like to act it out in sign language? We think that would be great.
Got it. Our God and God of our ancestors, be pleased with our rest. Sanctify us with your mitzvot and grant us a share of your Torah. Satisfy us with your goodness and gladden us with your salvation. Purify our hearts to serve you in truth. In your gracious love, Adonai, our God, grant us your holy Shabbat as a heritage. May Israel, who sanctifies your name, rest on Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai, who sanctifies Shabbat. Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Amen. Thank you. Linda, would you read for us on page 137, ever present one?
Sure. Ever present one, may we, your people Israel, be worthy in our deeds and our prayer, wherever we live, wherever we seek you, in this land, in Zion restored, in all lands. You are our God, whom alone we serve in reverence. Baruch atah Adonai, she'odaka levaraka v'yirah na'avod.
Amen. And on page 139, we find our litany of all those beautiful things for which we are thankful. I think everybody got an opportunity to read. Is there anyone who would love to read page 139? Marcia, go for it.
You want me to share it with anybody?
Would anyone like to share with Marcia? Sheila would like to share. All right, ladies, you're alternating. Marcia, take it away.
For the expanding grandeur of creation, worlds known and unknown, galaxies beyond galaxies, filling us with awe and challenging our imaginations, Modim Anachnu Lach.
For this fragile planet Earth, its times and tides, its sunsets and seasons, Modim Anachnu Lach.
For the joy of human life, its wonders and surprises, its hopes and achievements, Modim Anachnu Lach.
For human community, our common past and future hope, our oneness transcending all separation, our capacity to work for peace and justice in the midst of hostility and oppression, Modim Anachnu Lach.
For high hopes and noble causes, for faith without fanaticism, for understanding of views not shared, Modim Anachnu Lach.
For all who have labored and suffered for a fairer world, who have lived so that others might live in dignity and freedom, Modim Anachnu Lach.
For human liberties and sacred rights, for opportunities to change and grow, to affirm and choose, Modim Anachnu Lach.
We pray that we may live not by our fears, but by our hopes, not by our words, but by our deeds.
Baruch atah Adonai, hatov simcha ochanalech hadot.
Blessed are you, Adonai. Your name is goodness, and you are worthy of thanksgiving.
Amen. Thank you so much, ladies. We're going to go ahead now to page 140, Sim Shalom. Sim Shalom, Torah uvracha. Sim Shalom, Torah uvracha. Sim Shalom, Torah uvracha. Sim Shalom, Torah וחסד Shalom Tova Uvracha. Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha. Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha. Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha. Aleinu. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Amen. Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha. Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha. Shalom Tova Uvracha. Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha. Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha. Take a moment for silence. Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. All right, everybody, it is time for Seder Kriyat HaTorah, the service for the reading of Torah. Let me shuffle some things around and get us ready. Let's turn over to page 244. Ein kamocha Elohim Adonai, vein kemasecha malchutecha malchut kol olamim, umemshaltecha bechol dor vador. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Adonai oz le'amo yitain, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Page 246, and let us rise. Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, Mirushalayim. Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah. Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah. Le'amo Yisrael b'kedushato. Shema Yisrael. Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo. Gadol Adonai Hiti, Umeromen Hashemo Yachtav. Lecha Adonai Hagedula, V'Hagevura, V'Hatiferet, V'Hanetzach, V'Hahon, Ki Cho B'Shamayim U'Va'aretz, Ki Cho B'Shamayim U'Va'aretz, Lecha Adonai HaMamlaka, Ve'amid na'aseh lechol lerosh. And we can be seated. Give me a moment to find my spot in the Torah. I'm still on the 10 Commandments from last week. Oh, that's next week. I just found my bat mitzvah portion. Hold on. That must have been really short. Hold on. Got it. Okay, so I'm going to try to get us Torah Cam. I love Torah. I'm going to miss Torah Cam. I would love to make Torah Cam a permanent fixture of Shabbat morning services. I'm just not sure it's a feasible thing forever moving forward, but boy, is it fun. Okay, so let's go ahead. Everybody unmute because we'll do our Torah blessings together. Let me make sure that I have the yad. And let me see if I can position the computer. Let's see. I love Torah Cam. I do. Okay, wait, let's see here. Hold on. Because I know the text is higher up. Okay, so is that a clear picture?
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, let's do our blessing before everybody. Baruch Hu.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'chanu b'kol ha'amim Baruch atah Adonai Noten haTorah.
Amen. So in Torah study, we looked at the very end of Mishpatim. Now we're going to look at the very beginning. Ve'ele hamishpatim asher tasim lifneihem. These are the rules that you shall set before them. Of course, that's God talking to Moses. Ki tikne eved ivri sheishanim ya'avod. Hold on. When you acquire a Hebrew slave, he shall serve 6 years. In the 7th year, he shall go free without payment. Im begapo yavo begapo yetze im ba'al isha hu v'yotzei ishto imo. Im aronav yitain lo isha, you know what, I'm gonna slow down, hold up. If he came single, he shall leave single. If he had a wife, his wife shall leave with him. And then I want to pick up at Im Adonav. That's where I was. Yes. Im Adonav yitain lo isha viladecha lo vanim o vanot. Ha'isha viladecha tihiye la'adonecha v'hu yotze begapho. If his master gave him a wife and she has borne him children, the wife and her children shall belong to the master, and he shall leave alone. Ve'im amor, sorry. Ve'im amor yomor ha'eved, ahavti et adoni et ishti ve'et beni lo etze chovsho, vehigisho adonav. But if the slave declares, I love my master and my wife and children, I do not wish to go free, Adonav el ha'elohim v'higisho el hadelet o el hamizuzah v'ratza Adonav et oznei b'martzeya v'avdo le'olam. His master shall take him before God. He shall be brought to the door or the doorpost, and his master shall pierce his ear with an awl, and he shall then remain his slave for life. Let's finish up. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu
Abraham, Asher
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu
Amen. So we talked about just a very briefly this morning that there are different words for laws. There's the chukim and mishpatim, and these are, that Torah portion, mishpatim, had to do with justice and how to treat others. This has to do with interpersonal relationships, and it begins with this one between a master and the slave. Any comments on that particular portion? We don't have to stop at all for comments, but does anybody have any? No. Oh. What, Marcia? No. Okay. So while we are in the presence of the Torah, we're going to turn our thoughts to those who are in need of healing. Ramisha Berach, turn over to page 253. Give me one moment. Mishaberach avotenu ve'imotenu Avraham Yitzchak ve'Yaakov Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah hu yavarech et hacholim. May the one who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah bless and heal those who are ill. Our congregational family is especially thinking of Carol Bagpop, Rosalie Teddy Bono, Peggy Saren Clark, Tom Davis, Devorah Bat Rachel, the Elkin family, Art Fields, Alan Halperin, Margaret Hare, Mary Hartman, Robert Kay, Janet Kennedy, Marilyn Levitt, Teresa Levy, Judy Major, Barda McDonald, Gary Nadler, Laura Osofsky, Buddy Pollock, Jean Posen, Randall Rout, Sandra Resnikoff, Alex Rosen, Stephanie Sibilia, Judy Shea, Ruthie Silver, Brinley and Micah Stanridge, Bernice Tobias, Ruth Van Alstein, Judy Van Porter. And if you have names to add this morning, please go ahead and do so now. Does anyone have names that you'd like to share? Sheila, for sure. Go ahead.
Yeah. Lori Curland, Bruce Emanuel, Scott Emanuel, Barbie Young, Jean Seltzer.
Thank you. Anyone else this morning? Okay, so may the Blessed One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. And may God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit. And let us say amen when we join together in our song for Misha. May the source of strength bless the ones before us. Help us find the courage make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shalema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. Okay, so let us return the Torah to the ark. If you'd like to stand, let's do that. I'm going to lift and dress. We'll pick up together on page 256 for Eitz Chaim. Vezot haTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael av hi Adonai biyad Moshe. Lai 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 lai. Yai lai lai lai, ya la lai 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 lai, yai lai la lai lai la lai lai. Yai lai 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 lai, yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai lai lai, ya la lai 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 lai, yai lai la lai lai la lai lai. Eitz Chaim hi lamachazikim ba v'tom lecha meushar derachecha darcheinon v'chol netivotecha shalom. Hashivenu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva Kadesh Kadesh Yameinu Kadesh Yameinu Kekedem. We turn now over to page 282 for Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach l'Adon hakol, l'tikru la'leotzer b'reishit, shelo asanu kigoyei ha'aratzot, ve'lo zamanu kimishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chalkinu kahem megoralenu kefo hamonam. ואנחנו קוראים משתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה Adonai echad, u'shemo echad.
Yeah.
All right, we can have a seat for a moment. Bottom of page 293. Our thoughts turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. Our congregational families in a period of Shloshim, the Shabbat for Arnold Kaur, Helene S. Coleman, Rabbi Sylvan Wolf, William F. Ryan, and Julian Prager. In the Shabbat, we observe the yahrzeit of Herman Borakov, Isaac Bowman, Jeanette Brody, Joseph Brumel, Rose Brandt Burns, Marla Stearman Campbell, Sam Cohen, Donald Cohn, Francis S. David, David Davis, Marvin R. Edwards, Helen Jane Gelbman, Dina Halley, Herman Kanat, Mildred Klein, Helen Klein, William Krinsky, Jackie Kaur, Elizabeth Lomar, Adolph Mandel, Philip Pearl, William D. Pollock Sr., Morris Retner, Emmanuel Seitlin, Gay Smolin, Charles Sussman, Lillian Van Balen Block, Ethel C. Young. And if you have a name this morning that you would like to add to our list, please go ahead and unmute and share with us now. Okay, for all of those whom we've named aloud and those we hold dear in our hearts, we rise together as a community to extol God's name through the words of Kaddish Yatom, the Mourner's Kaddish on page 294. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'alma divrach yirutei v'amlich malchutei, b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'izman karim v'imru, Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach le'alam u'almei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yithalev v'yithalal shemei dekudsha berechu, le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran v'yama v'imru, Amen. Yehi shlama Rabba min Shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to all Israel, to which we say, Amen. And let us be seated once more. And let's see, we're going to move to conclude our service. Any requests for our closing song this morning? No requests. I've got an Adon Olam, an Ein Kelohinu, a Lichullah, a Tfilat HaDerech, an Oseh Shalom.
Can we do wasn't it the Adon Olam? It was a Ladino melody that we did a couple weeks ago.
Let's see. It's either in here or in the other binder, but I keep it close by. See if it's in here. Ah, got it. Thanks, Marilyn. All right, so this is the Adon Olam melody by Abraham Lopez Cardozo. Lay, 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 Adon Olam Hashem alach b'terem kol yitzir nivra leheid nasa v'cheso kol asay melech shemo nikra le'acharei kitlot hakol levardo yimloch nora ve'hu haya ve'hu Tehuia Betifara Tehuecha the Ancient the Hanzilo Lehapira the Dirishi Bilitafli Elohos Behamisura Tehueli V'chaygoali Tzorech li beitzara, v'hunisi umanos li minat kosi beyom ekara. Miyato afkiruchi v'heiti shani Ruachi Givriati Adonai Velo Ira. It does. It's very magical. All right, everybody, let's unmute. We'll make a little Kiddush and Motzi together.
Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Arei Bariach Hashem.
L'chaim.
Oh.
Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi
Amen. Okay, distribute.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shalom.
Shalom.
Before everybody splits, I just wanted to correct one thing I said when we were talking about moving a body across state lines. That the big thing about the one I was thinking of is that the person had already been buried and was there for a while, and then the body had to be exhumed and moved. And that's why they have to do a lot of paperwork to make sure it's the right body and everything.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about. Exhuming bodies at a later date to move.
And moving it. Okay.
Oh yeah, no, you were right.
It's not, it's a big airline ticket if they're dead and moved. But
They don't take up a lot of room.
They take up at least 2 seats.
That's cargo. So
that's cargo, yeah.
And it puts a lot of weight in the plane.
It means fewer people are allowed to have that extra third suitcase. That's the.
They probably these days have a body in every plane, unfortunately.
Probably
could be.
I brought back a body from when I was in the Navy, and they had taken, the coffin was in the cabin of the plane. And I was an escort. We stopped in the Azores, and Air Force people came aboard and said, "You can go and we will guard the body." And I was able to get a bite to eat. But that was military type of ceremony.
Really?
Actually, my cousin was on a flight from Hawaii, and an elderly woman in her row across the aisle died.
Oh.
On the plane?
In the middle of the flight, yes. And they locked her in one of the lavatories to make it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well,
was this recently?
No, it was quite a while ago. It was a number of years ago. They were over the Pacific Ocean. It's like, we got to keep going.
You do, yeah.
They can't land anywhere.
No little island, Tommy.
Yeah.
Well, Shabbat, everybody.
Happy birthday.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Whose birthday?
Bye-bye.
Thank you. It's an exciting week.
Good to see everybody. Bye-bye.
See everybody as well. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.